The sky over DracoWar burned red as the suns dipped low behind jagged mountains. The dragons of the northern cliffs stirred, sensing an unusual tension in the air. Among them, Cirith, the deadliest dragon mother of all, perched atop her rocky lair, her massive wings folded tightly against her body. Her scales shimmered like molten metal, her eyes sharp and fierce, and her claws dug deep into the stone beneath her. No creature dared approach her without trembling, for stories of her fury were whispered across the planet. Today, however, there was something different. A strange hum filled the air, not from the wind or volcanoes, but from a hovering vessel descending from the sky. It was small and smooth, unlike anything Cirith had ever seen. From it, a group of tall, thin aliens emerged, carrying a bundle wrapped in pale cloth. They moved with careful precision, avoiding the rocks as they approached the dragon's lair. Cirith watched, curiosity flickering in her golden eyes. She could feel the fear radiating from the humans, or whatever they were, but there was also something soft, something fragile, in the bundle they carried. Her sharp instincts warned her to roar and drive them away, yet a strange pull stopped her. The leader of the aliens stepped forward and spoke in a language full of clicks and hisses, pointing at the bundle. The humans, small, fragile, and utterly unarmed, looked up at her with eyes wide and unafraid. Inside the cloth, a tiny human infant stirred, making a soft cooing sound. Cirith's nostrils flared. She had never seen such a creature before. It had no claws, no scales, no teeth sharp enough to bite even a small lizard. And yet, it moved, it breathed, and somehow it dared to be alive on her planet. The aliens knelt, setting the infant on the ground carefully. "We leave it to you," the leader said. "It is an experiment. Watch how it survives." They backed away slowly, their long fingers twitching with a mixture of fear and awe. Cirith's tail twitched, a low rumble vibrating in her chest. She lowered her massive head to examine the child. The infant looked up at her, and for a moment the world seemed to pause. Its tiny hands reached out, its eyes wide and curious, and it let out a soft laugh. Cirith's sharp teeth clicked softly, a sound closer to curiosity than menace. No dragon had ever seen such innocence. No dragon had ever seen life so fragile. For hours she circled the infant, testing its movements. She nudged it lightly with the tip of her claw. The baby giggled again, not afraid at all. Cirith recoiled slightly. Fearless? Or foolish? She could not decide. Her instincts screamed that this creature was not meant for her world. And yet, she felt something stir deep inside her, something she had never felt before. A strange warmth, a strange care. The aliens watched from a distance, whispering to each other in low, anxious tones. They had expected chaos, a fight, perhaps even the infant's death. But Cirith did nothing but study, her eyes unblinking and intense. She circled closer, then lowered her massive head until her snout was almost touching the child. The infant reached up and placed a tiny hand on her nose. Cirith froze. A shiver ran down her spine, not from cold but from shock. No creature had ever dared touch her so boldly. Hours passed and the sun set completely. Shadows stretched across the jagged cliffs, but Cirith did not move. She simply watched, breathing slowly as the infant yawned and curled into a small ball on the rock. A soft coo escaped its lips, and Cirith felt an unfamiliar sensation. Protectiveness. She wanted to shield it from the cold wind, from the jagged cliffs, from the world itself. She lowered her wings to wrap partially around it, her massive body forming a safe circle. The aliens had long since retreated, uncertain what to do next. They had come to test the human, but they now realized it was Cirith who was making the choice. She would decide its fate. She would decide whether it lived or died. And in that choice, something remarkable happened. For the first time in her life, Cirith felt tenderness. The deadliest dragon mother on DracoWar, feared by all, cradled the tiny human as if it were her own hatchling. She adjusted her body, shifting the baby to a warmer spot against her scales. The infant snuggled against her, stretching tiny arms and legs, completely trusting. Cirith's eyes softened, just slightly, but enough that the air seemed to hum with a new kind of power. Night fell over the cliffs, the stars blinking coldly above. And there, in the shadow of mountains and under the gaze of alien observers, a bond began, a bond no one could have predicted. Cirith, the fiercest of dragons, had chosen to care for the human infant, not as prey, not as a curiosity, but as something precious. In the dark, she listened to the baby's soft breathing and realized something important. Life, no matter how small, deserved protection. And maybe, just maybe, this fragile little human could teach her something the dragons had never known. The first night passed, and Sirith, the deadliest dragon mother of all, held the human child close, unaware that by doing so, she had begun a story that would change the fate of DracoWar forever. Days passed on the jagged cliffs of DracoWar, and the human infant, named Aaron by the observing aliens, grew under the careful watch of Sirith, the deadliest dragon mother. The suns rose and fell, painting the sky in colors that humans would call gold and crimson. Aaron's small fingers explored the rough scales of Sirith's body, and he laughed when her tail swished too close. Sirith, for her part, adjusted to this tiny, curious creature, discovering new patience she never knew she had. The aliens had returned to a distant observation point, unsure of how to record the events unfolding. They had expected chaos, perhaps a brief curiosity from Sirith, followed by the baby's death. Instead, the dragon mother had cradled him, sheltered him from the wind, and even allowed him to crawl over her claws and wings. She was teaching him in her own way the harsh rules of DracoWar. Every small movement of the infant was met with careful attention. When he fell over a rock, Sirith's massive wings shielded him. When he reached for the edge of a cliff, her tail nudged him safely back. Aaron was fearless in ways no dragon could understand. He would giggle at dangers that made even Sirith tense. A flock of skydrakes passed overhead, their shrill cries echoing across the cliffs. While Sirith tensed, ready to fight, Aaron clapped his hands and laughed. Sirith's golden eyes softened. She realized that the child saw the world differently, not as a threat, but as something to explore. The dragon mother began to teach Aaron basic survival, not as punishment but as preparation. She would allow him to touch certain safe rocks that were warm from the sun, explaining with low rumbles and gestures what was dangerous. She showed him which plants could soothe hunger and how to avoid the sharp-edged crystals that jutted from the cliffs. Aaron's small human mind absorbed everything quickly, surprising the aliens who had doubted his abilities. One day, a storm swept across the cliffs, lightning striking near the lair, thunder shaking the very rocks. Aaron cried, frightened by the sudden roar of the sky. Sirith lowered her massive head, wrapping her wings fully around him, shielding him from rain and wind. The lightning cast shadows across her scales, making her seem even more enormous and terrifying, but Aaron felt no fear. In her embrace he felt warmth, safety, and an odd kind of love he would not have known in his human world. Sirith, too, felt something stir within her, an emotion dragons rarely experienced. Pride, protection, affection. As weeks turned into months, Aaron began to imitate Sirith. He would hiss softly when he saw other dragons, stretching his arms like wings. Sirith found this amusing, her deep rumbling laughter echoing across the cliffs. The alien scientists, observing from afar, whispered in disbelief. A human had learned not just to survive, but to communicate in subtle ways with the deadliest predator on DracoWar. It was something the aliens had never seen before. Then came the first challenge. A group of smaller dragons, curious and aggressive, approached Sirith's lair, drawn by the scent of the human child. They had heard rumors among themselves that Sirith cared for a fragile creature, and they saw it as weakness, a chance to assert dominance. Sirith's wings unfurled, her scales glinting in the sun, her roar shaking the cliffs. The smaller dragons hesitated, and used to such power displayed without immediate attack. Aaron, despite his size, took a bold step forward. He had watched Sirith protect him countless times. Using a small stone, he clinked it against a larger rock, mimicking a warning sound he had heard from her. The small dragons paused, confused. Then Aaron clapped and banged again, adding his own rhythm. Sirith looked at him with surprise. The child was clever, finding his own way to warn them without using claws or fire. The smaller dragons hissed and eventually retreated, unwilling to risk the combined power of dragon mother and human. Sirith nudged Aaron gently with her snout, a gesture of approval. The infant laughed, clapping his tiny hands. The aliens took hurried notes, trying to understand what they had just witnessed. It was more than survival. It was adaptation, courage, and intelligence, traits they had not expected in a human so young. Night came again and the cliffs were calm. Sirith curled around Aaron, letting him rest against her warm scales. He slept peacefully, trusting her completely. Sirith watched the stars above, thinking of the strange bond they had formed. She realized that this human child was no ordinary creature. He was different. He had something dragons did not: curiosity that did not fear, cleverness that did not harm, and courage that did not flee. The aliens, observing quietly, exchanged worried glances. They had sent a fragile human to a dragon, expecting death or failure. Instead, they saw a bond that defied expectation, a human who could survive through trust, learning and courage. Cirith had chosen to protect him, and in doing so, the prophecy they had studied for centuries seemed to awaken. Cirith let out a low, satisfied rumble, wrapping her wings tighter. Aaron stirred in his sleep, tiny hands clutching her scales. The deadliest dragon mother of Drakthar had begun to teach a human how to live in a world of fire, fear, and strength. And the child in return was teaching her something even greater: the potential for trust, for cleverness, and for a bond that could change the world. The first steps of an extraordinary journey had begun, and neither dragon nor human knew just how far it would take them. The winds on Drakthar grew sharper as more dragons began to notice Cirith's unusual care for the human child. Rumors traveled fast among the cliffs and volcanoes, carried on the wings of smaller, curious dragons. They whispered of a deadliest dragon mother harboring a fragile human, treating it with tenderness instead of fire. Many dragons saw it as betrayal. To be kind to a human was unnatural. To protect one was foolish. One morning, as Aaron played near the edge of Cirith's lair, several elder dragons landed with heavy thuds. Their wings blocked the sunlight, casting enormous shadows over the cliffs. Each of them was larger than the smaller scouts Aaron had seen before, their scales dark and gleaming, eyes sharp and full of anger. They hissed and clicked in the ancient tongue of dragons, a language older than any human could understand. Cirith's eyes narrowed, her tail flicking with tension. She lowered her massive head to shield Aaron, spreading her wings to create a wall of scales between him and the intruders. Aaron stopped playing, sensing the sudden danger. He looked up at Cirith, wide-eyed but not crying. Somehow, he seemed to understand that she would protect him. The elder dragons circled, their voices rising in harsh tones. They demanded that Cirith hand over the human child. They accused her of weakness, of breaking the sacred rules of Drakthar, and of inviting disaster by harboring a fragile creature in a world of fire and claws. Cirith's roar shook the cliffs, echoing across the mountains like rolling thunder. She refused. She would not give up Aaron. The elders hissed and advanced, claws scraping against the rocks. Cirith's wings flared, sending gusts of wind that knocked some of them back. Aaron, small but brave, took a deep breath. He remembered Cirith teaching him how to watch for danger, how to use his mind instead of strength. He picked up a few stones, throwing them with surprising aim. The stones hit the rocks near the approaching dragons, startling them, creating loud echoes that confused the attackers. Cirith let out a low growl of approval. The infant was clever, learning the ways of survival quickly. She moved alongside him, her body a living shield. The elder dragons lunged, but Cirith's speed and strength were unmatched. Claws and teeth slashed the air, sparks flying where their claws scraped against the jagged stones. Aaron ran along her tail and wings, mimicking the moves she had shown him. Every small step he took helped him avoid danger, and Cirith watched, amazed by his courage. Hours passed and the battle of wills continued. The elder dragons could not break Cirith's defense, nor could they scare the human child. Aaron even found small openings, tiny gaps in the attackers' positions, and would make a small noise or clap to distract them. Each time, Cirith took advantage of the distraction to push the intruders back. The aliens observing from a distant cliff murmured in disbelief. They had expected the human to hide, cry, or freeze. Instead, he had learned to act, to think, and to protect himself in ways no dragon had ever seen from a creature so small. Finally, the elder dragons hissed in frustration. They had underestimated both the deadliest dragon mother and the human child she protected. They recognized the bond between the two, a strange power stronger than fire or fear. They could not defeat it, at least not today. With sharp clicks of annoyance, they withdrew, leaving the cliffs and the lair behind. Cirith lowered her wings, letting Aaron run to her side. She nudged him gently with her snout, a gesture of praise and relief. Aaron laughed, clapping his tiny hands, completely fearless. He had faced dragons far larger than him and survived because he had trusted Cirith, and she had trusted him in return. The aliens scribbled frantic notes, realizing the human's bravery was not accidental. This was something innate, a strength no dragon possessed: cleverness, courage, and the ability to act under pressure with intelligence instead of brute force. The sun began to set, painting the jagged cliffs in fiery red and orange. Cirith curled her massive body around Aaron, shielding him from the evening chill. The small human nestled into her warm scales, tired but unafraid. Cirith stared at the stars above, thinking about what had just occurred. No dragon had ever faced a challenge like this, nor had they seen a human survive and act with such boldness. She realized that Aaron was special. Not just brave or clever, but remarkable in a way that could change everything. The alien observers whispered among themselves. The human child had survived tests they did not even plan. He had faced the deadliest of dragons, and through courage and intelligence, he had held his ground. Cirith had not just protected him, she had allowed him to grow stronger by teaching him how to survive and act. This was more than survival, it was proof that humans were capable of things even the fiercest creatures could not imagine. Night fell over Drakthar. Ciritha's lair glowed faintly under the stars, the fire of the volcanoes casting shadows across the rocks. Aran slept, safe against her chest, and Cirith kept watch. She had faced threats before, but nothing like this. Nothing that demanded patience, intelligence, and trust. She realized that by protecting this fragile human, she was discovering something dragons had never known, that courage and cleverness were not limited by size or strength. The first true test was over. Cirith, the deadliest dragon mother, had shown the dragons of Drakthar that she would not abandon her human child. And Aran, the tiny human, had proven that bravery and cleverness could stand alongside fire and scales. Tomorrow there would be new challenges. But for now, mother and child rested, bound together by a trust that defied fear, rules, and even the fiercest dragons. And in the quiet night, the alien observers began to realize that something remarkable was unfolding. A story of humans and dragons, courage and intelligence, fire and trust, that would change the fate of Drakthar forever. The next morning the air on Drakthar was tense. Cirith and Aran had survived the challenge from the elder dragons, but the alien observers had grown impatient. They had studied the prophecies for centuries, and now, seeing the human child live and adapt among dragons, they decided to test the bond between mother and child further. From a distance, the aliens activated a signal, summoning a group of the most aggressive dragons on the planet. These dragons were massive, sharper, and far more dangerous than any Cirith had faced before. They descended from the cliffs like dark storms, roaring as they approached the lair. Aran, now a toddler, clutched Ciritha's scales tightly, his tiny face determined. He had learned much since his arrival, but this would be his first true test against creatures that wanted to harm him. Cirith stretched her wings, spreading them wide to create a protective barrier. Her eyes glowed gold as she roared, flames licking the tips of her teeth. The attacking dragons hesitated for a moment, shocked at the sight of the deadliest dragon mother standing firm with a human child at her side. Aran, watching the intruders, remembered Ciritha's lessons: observe, think, act. He picked up small rocks, tossing them toward the attackers. Each throw was aimed to make noise and create confusion. Cirith glanced down, surprised at his cleverness. The human's ways of thinking were strange but effective. She nodded to him, signaling that he could act. Aran's small hands moved quickly, clapping and banging against the rocks, drawing the attention of some of the dragons and creating openings for Cirith to strike. The battle was intense. Claws scraped against cliffs, fire shot into the air, and the earth trembled under the weight of the dragons. Cirith moved with precision, protecting Aran at every moment. The child, small but agile, darted alongside her, using his cleverness to distract the attackers. One dragon lunged at Aran, but he quickly rolled behind a rock, and Ciritha's tail slammed into the attacker, sending it crashing to the ground. The aliens watched, their mouths open in astonishment. They had expected chaos, perhaps the humans' defeat, but not this. Aran was surviving. He was learning. He was acting. And he was doing it in partnership with Cirith. The prophecy had spoken of a human who could unite creatures through courage and intelligence, but no one had imagined it would happen so early. Hours passed and the attacking dragons began to tire. Ciritha's movements were powerful and precise, and Aran's clever distractions were proving effective. One by one the intruders retreated, realizing that neither the child nor Cirith could be easily defeated. Cirith lowered her wings, letting out a deep, satisfied rumble. She nudged Aran gently with her snout, and the child laughed, clapping his tiny hands. The aliens, scribbling notes furiously, whispered to each other. This was more than survival. It was a display of courage, intelligence, and strategy that no dragon had ever seen in a human. The child had learned not just to survive but to act with thought and bravery, turning a dangerous situation into a victory. After the battle, Cirith and Aran moved to a calmer area near the lair. The child was tired, his small body exhausted from the morning's events, but he still smiled at his dragon mother. Cirith lowered herself so he could rest against her scales. She felt a strange pride, something no dragon had ever felt before. This human was not just strong or clever, he had spirit. He had heart. And he had trust in her that made her want to protect him forever. That night, under the twin moons of Drakthar, Cirith reflected on the events of the day. She had faced creatures far stronger and more dangerous than anything a human should encounter. Yet Aaron had survived not just because she protected him, but because he had learned, adapted, and acted with intelligence beyond his size. He had fulfilled the prophecy in ways even the aliens had not anticipated. Aaron slept against her chest, the soft rise and fall of his breathing calm and steady. Cirith watched the stars above, realizing that this tiny human was extraordinary. He had the courage to face fear, the cleverness to act in danger, and the ability to bond with a creature as powerful as herself. No dragon had ever been so impressed by a human before. The aliens returned to their ship, discussing the implications of what they had witnessed. They understood now that humans were not weak or fragile. They were unique, capable of learning, surviving, and even influencing creatures far stronger than themselves. Aaron had proven that a human child could do what no one had expected: survive among dragons and even help control the outcome of a battle through cleverness and courage. Cirith nudged Aaron gently with her snout, whispering in her low dragon tongue, though he could not understand the words. Still he felt her care, her approval, and the warmth of her scales. In that moment, the bond between dragon and human became unbreakable. The deadliest dragon mother had found a companion, and the human child had found a protector unlike any other. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, and new lessons. But tonight, under the calm moons and the glowing stars, Cirith and Aaron rested, knowing that together they could face anything. And in the quiet of the cliffs, a prophecy was quietly coming true. A human nurtured and protected by a dragon would change the fate of Drakthar forever. The suns rose over Drakthar, painting the jagged cliffs in gold and red. Cirith and Aaron had survived every challenge the dragons and the aliens had thrown at them. Yet the world was changing. News of the human child and his bond with the deadliest dragon mother spread across the dragon clans. Some dragons were curious, others angry, and many simply could not believe what they had witnessed. Aaron, now a little older and stronger, crawled along Cirith's massive scales. His small fingers traced the patterns of her armor like skin, and he laughed when her tail swished gently beneath him. Cirith lowered her head, nudging him softly. She had watched him grow, teaching him the ways of Drakthar, showing him how to survive and act, but she had also learned from him. His courage, his cleverness, and his laughter had changed something inside her, a softness she had never known existed. The alien scientists returned, not with hostility but with awe. They had studied the prophecy for centuries, but nothing in their records had prepared them for this sight. A human child, small and fragile by any standard, living freely among dragons, commanding respect and fear in the same way as the deadliest predator on the planet. They took notes, their devices recording everything, but even their technology could not fully capture what they saw. The human spirit was more than numbers or data. It was cleverness, bravery, and an ability to connect with others across species. One day a crisis arrived. A volcanic eruption shook the cliffs near Cirith's lair. Lava flowed down the mountainside, rocks tumbled, and thick smoke filled the air. Dragons scattered in panic, fleeing the danger, but Cirith moved with purpose. She knew the safest path and she nudged Aaron gently, signaling him to follow. Aaron ran beside her, using the knowledge he had gained from her teaching. He jumped over cracks in the rocks, dodged falling stones, and even found clever shortcuts that saved them time. Together they reached a safe plateau. Cirith lowered herself, letting Aaron rest against her chest. The human child's chest rose and fell rapidly, but he was safe. Cirith gazed at him with pride. He had faced real danger far beyond any previous test. And he had survived not by brute strength but by courage and intelligence. The aliens observed silently, realizing that humans were capable of things no species on Drakthar could have imagined. In the following weeks, the dragons began to approach Cirith differently. Some came with curiosity, watching her protect and teach Aaron. Others came with caution, unsure if they should challenge this unusual bond. But slowly they began to respect it. They saw that strength alone did not define survival or leadership. The child had survived and thrived because of trust, cleverness, and courage, qualities the dragons had never valued in the same way. Aaron grew stronger with each passing day. He learned to mimic the dragon's sounds, to anticipate their movements, and to think quickly in dangerous situations. Cirith taught him everything she could, but she also watched as he taught her. He found ways to solve problems she had not considered, ways to calm frightened dragons, and even ways to communicate with the alien observers that Cirith could not. The human's ability to learn, adapt, and influence others was extraordinary. One evening, as the sun set and the cliffs glowed in warm light, Cirith and Aaron sat atop the highest peak. Aaron looked out across Drakthar, his small hand resting on Siritha's massive snout. He had survived storms, battles and volcanic eruptions. He had faced the fiercest dragons and lived. And in doing so he had changed the way dragons saw humans forever. Sirith lowered her wings, curling around him protectively. She knew that one day he would not be a small child anymore, but she also knew he would carry the lessons of Drakthar and the trust between them wherever he went. The prophecy had been fulfilled, not because of fire or claws, but because of courage, cleverness, and the bond between a human and a dragon. The aliens, now humbled, realized the full truth. Humans were not weak. They were not fragile. They were special. Their intelligence, courage, and ability to connect with others could shape worlds, even in places ruled by fire and scales. Eren had shown them all that a single human could make a difference, even among creatures far stronger than themselves. Years passed and Eren grew into a young boy, strong, clever, and fearless. Dragons no longer saw humans as fragile creatures. They saw them as partners, beings capable of learning, surviving, and even leading in their own way. Sirith watched him with pride, knowing that their bond had not only saved his life but had also changed the future of Drakthar forever. The alien observers recorded the final notes in their logs. A human child, nurtured and protected by the deadliest dragon, has survived, adapted, and influenced dragons. The prophecy is fulfilled. Humans are extraordinary. Sirith nudged Eren gently with her snout, and the child smiled, knowing he was home. Together they had faced danger, defied expectations, and forged a bond stronger than fire or fear. The deadliest dragon mother had cradled a human as her own, and in doing so she had helped the species realize its true potential. Under the twin moons and the glowing stars, mother and child rested. The cliffs of Drakthar were quiet, the wind soft against their scales and skin. And in the silence, the story of courage, cleverness, and the bond between dragon and human had reached its conclusion. A tale of survival, trust, and the extraordinary power of a human spirit. Eren, once a fragile human infant, had become a legend. Sirith, once feared by all, had become a protector, a teacher, and a friend. Together they had changed the fate of Drakthar forever.